I am planning to draw every single enemy from Hollow Knight, and for that, I'll need Hunter's Journal. I start by cutting big sheets of paper in half to get even more sheets of paper, cause I will need a lot of these. There are 164 entries in Hollow Knight. I divided them into 2 enemies, or 1 boss per page, and added some fancy title pages to distinguish each area for a grand total of 68 pages or 34 sheets of paper, which I'll need to fold in half in order to bind them. In my eagerness to finish the sheets, at some point I attempted to cut the entire sketchbook with a utility knife, messing up the length of them in the process. Yeah, we're into a rough start, just like these crooked edges that I tried to clean with an X-Acto knife and a piece of sandpaper. Next I punch some holes in the first paper and use it as a guide for the rest of them. I assemble them into stacks of 4 to create signatures and begin the binding. The crafting gods must have been against me that day, cause everything kept failing. The needle refused to pass through the holes, stabbing my fingers when it did. The signatures decided to defy gravity and resisted my efforts to push them down. And as I was pulling the thread, it repeatedly slipped, causing my arm to boop the camera. Moving on, I untie the cords and trim the edges. The paper pad that I used consists of 15 big sheets, which cut in half give 30 smaller sheets, not 34. I can't afford to buy a new sketchbook just to cut in half 2 sheets, cause these things are expensive, so I'll have to use a different binding method. I am going to bind single sheets without folding them, but I want them to match the style of the signatures, which have their pages progressively sticking out while their height remains the same. So I'll have to fake that effect. The first paper should be identical to the previous sheets, while the rest get progressively longer. 1 to 3 mm per page should do the trick. I marked each page with numbers so that I know how to assemble them, and when put all together, they look like this. I mark the holes, keeping the same measurements as before to result in a unified book spine, but 1 cm away from the edge. Once I am done, I punch them. As I was binding, I realized that with this method the pages have large gaps in between them. So large in fact, that these 4 pages are equal in height with 4 signatures. Not what I had in mind, but at least it made the book chunky. To create my final text block, I connect the previous ones by looping the thread left from the second binding around the cord left from the first one. This way I'm extending the cord and thus creating a uniform spine. To make the spine round, I alternate between gluing and hammering until I am left with a somewhat round shape. Next up, I'll add some decorations. First, I stitch the end pages to the text block. I chose the color blue because to me, Hallownest is represented by that color. Maybe it's due to the game's blue cover, or the desaturated grey blues of Dirtmouth, but between the plethora of colors this game offers, I felt that blue is the most fitting for a journal. Following the blue theme, I use blue and silver satin ribbons for the bookmarks. I tried to seal the edges by quickly passing them through a candle flame, but that didn't work, so I used some PVA glue instead. I place them roughly in the middle of the text block and secure the other ends to the spine with Uhu glue. For the headbands I use a leather cord with blue and silver threads. I glue plain linen to cover and bulk the spine, and to correct the curvature, I glue little strips in strategic places. And I have to say, this turned out surprisingly well. A thick cardboard will act as my covers. Since I don't have an electrical machine, or even a handsaw, I have to score many shallow lines until the wood has been scored enough to be snapped. I then sand the edges to make them smooth. I drill holes at an angle where the cords of the spine are located. The angle will help them lay flat when glued. I connect the covers to the text block by passing the cords through the holes, and to make the connection permanent, I unthread them and spread glue on top. I place parchment paper, close the cover, and press it as far as I can near the edge to pull on those cords. More glue goes on the outside, along with another parchment, before I add some weight and let it dry overnight. I bought this 2.5mm thick leather, cause I wanted to have the depth to carve it. But I need to make it much thinner on the perimeter and the spine to make the attachment at these places even possible. To do that, there are specific good quality skiving knives, but I thought to myself, ha! Who needs those? I needed those. With that somehow out of the way, I need to attach these two. The thicker the leather, the more moisture it requires to bend, so I spread plenty of water all over it. I apply glue on the spine and shape it by stretching and pulling, using a bone folder and of course, more water. I accentuate the spine ridges by tying wax strings around the book, folding the rest of the leather out of the way. When it's completely dry, I glue that as well. The four corners get the same treatment after I trim them. I can finally call this thing a book and start imprinting my designs of choice on the covers. This is Hunter's Journal, so I'll have that as a title on the front, followed by the symbol that shows up on the screen when you receive the journal. For the back of the book, I wanted to include Hunter's characteristic eyes. For the rest of them, I took inspiration from multiple elements of the game. For the corners, I wanted something that extends the corner protectors that I will add later in a curvy way. I chose the design from the title that pops up when you enter a new area, and I cut off the last 3 wiggly lines from either side to later place them at an angle. Finally, for the spine, I wanted to represent the king and the kingdom. So I depict what I think is the king of Hallownest at the center, then the kingdom of Hallownest in the form of monarch wings above and below, followed by a fancy symbol that I liked at the outer edges to tie them all together. Since the space there is limited, I removed the last lines from all of them. My wrist is thoroughly fainted from all the impressions, but I have to move on to carving. There is nothing spectacular about this, just plain old grinding, following the lines with a special knife. For hours. Lots of hours. I nearly lost my sanity, but with this finally done, I can move on to punching, as I like to call it. My goal is to lower down certain parts of the leather to add dimension. To do that, first I use a square angle tool, placing it vertically inside the line and punching it hard with a rubber mallet 3 to 4 times. Then move half the length of the tool and repeat. This pushes the leather down, but only at the edge, thus creating the illusion of depth. Then I use a pear-shaped tool that pushes down the leather evenly. For the corners and other tight places my big square and pear tools can't reach, I use teeny tiny versions. These have some additional texture, which is not what I was going for, but hey, let's just say they add character. Marking, carving and punching the designs took me a long time, but once I finish, you can really see how the designs are more refined and the book no longer looks flat. It's time for some color. Whenever I stain a certain area, I will first prime it with some neatsfoot oil. Its purpose is to keep the leather moist while the paints are drying, and it should work better than plain water. I start with the letters and follow with Hunter symbol. I paint the raised parts white and leave the others unpainted for now. I then dye the covers a bright blue. Since my paints are water-based, I dilute them with water and work in many thin layers. I apply them with a sponge supplied by the paints, occasionally using a flat brush to smooth them. I carefully paint the inside of the symbol with a dark blue and finish the outside with a lighter blue. It's a bit messy, but with a few touch-ups, it's looking nice and clean again. The same process goes for Hunter's eyes, but instead of white, I paint them dark blue, which I regretted once I finished, but there is no going back now. At this point, the book had been warped by the excessive layers of glue, and it didn't want to stay closed. So I decided, as a last-minute addition, to make a tiny belt for it. I measure the inside of the buckle using this tool, and mark that measurement by pressing the tool while dragging. I cut the strip with a rolling knife and repeat the process to end up with 2 strips. Now I need to thin them, finally equipped with a proper skiving knife, and I use an edge beveler for the edges. Part of the first strap will be folded around the metal tongue of the buckle. The metal tongue needs to pass through the folded piece, so I need to remove a thin line. First, I create 2 marks by piercing both ends of the folded strap. Then I cut 2 holes and connect them with 2 straight lines. I temporarily assemble the strip and the buckle to test their fit. To seal this placement, I need to add rivet caps, so I punch 2 holes and move on to creating the edges. I won't secure the strap yet, cause I need to paint it first. I want the edges to be round, so I use a teaspoon to trace the general shape, then freehand the outer lines. I carefully cut and bevel. I mark and then punch 3 holes in the strap without the buckle, and repeat the process of creating a round edge 2 more times. With the straps done, I need to burnish them. This process uses wax and a fancy tool to make the edges round and glossy for a high quality effect. After I burnish both straps, I paint them with a dark blue dye that I used for hunter's eyes. I thought it would be fancy if their undersides were lined with velvet, the same one that I will add to the inside of the covers. So I cut a piece of fabric, mark where the holes are, cut them out, glue to the leather, trim and repeat until both my straps are nice and velvety. The original buckle looked too weathered for the effect that I was going for. So before I attach the rivets, I painted silver. Now I'll attach the belt to the book. I begin by connecting the buckle to the strap using a double cap rivet. To attach the strap with the buckle to the front cover, I have to finally commit my decision and transfer the mark from my strap to the cover. The stakes were really high, cause if I failed to attach the belt, I would be left with an ugly mark on the book I've spent weeks to create. So I was starting to panic, and panicking leads to mistakes. Oh no! What have I done? Oh no, oh no, 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 no. You have to open. You have to open. I was supposed to close the rivet under the cover, not on the belt itself. Thankfully, I managed to break the rivet open. I did damage the paint on the sides in the process, but I fixed that with some more paint. To properly attach the straps, I need to drill the cover, but also chip away enough wood where the hole is, so that my rivets sit as deep inside the cover as possible, cause at its current state it's too thick to allow the rivets to close. To attach the second strap and make sure it's aligned with the first one, I clamp the book close, connect the 2 ends of the belt and eyeball how loose they need to be so that the book can open and close comfortably, while they remain tight enough to hold it closed. I mark the placement and use the same steps as before. As a final step, I treat the surface of the book using some leather cream, and specifically Saphir Renovator. It's supposedly the best quality cream that nourishes the leather and makes it waterproof. Once the cream has dried, I use paper towels to buff out the color by rubbing. This will remove excess paint and make the surface nice and polished. A cotton tab inside the letters and hunter symbol will clean the blue residue from the white areas. Those designs on the corners and the spine need some shine to stand out, so I'll add silver leaf all over them. I use a small brush to apply special glue, and taking small pieces of leaf, I gently tap them on when the glue starts to turn clear. After a few minutes, I can brush off the excess leaf. Some pieces manage to get stuck, so I grab some blue tack using tweezers and press it on them. For the extra stubborn pieces, I gently scratch them away with my X-Acto knife. To make the inside of the covers fancier, I will line them with velvet. I cut 2 identical pieces bigger than my covers. I thought that gluing a linen piece first would even out the surface of the cardboard, so I spread PVA with glue, attach the linen, let it dry, and glue the edge of the velvet close to the spine. I fold the outer edges in on themselves to make them crispier and glue them. I started the velvet before the belt, but once it's done, I go back to gluing the rest of the velvet. I roll a little strip of linen into a cylinder and glue it inside the hole that I've created for the rivets. This will help even out the surface. Then I place the corner protectors and spread a thin layer of PVA wood glue. I gently stretch and press the velvet so that it covers the inside evenly. With the velvet positioned and glued, I can also glue the corners in place. The velvet was not part of the plan originally, so I didn't care about the messy sides of the end pages, because they would have been glued where the velvet now lies. But now they can't. So to cover them, I will glue another blue sheet on top of them. The result is far from perfect, and it could have been avoided if I just protected the pages with parchment paper. But at least I learned from my mistakes. To finish them, I trim the edges, and with that, the book is almost done. Except for one last thing. When you acquire the journal in the game, Hunter tells you a few words hinting at how this works and asks you to complete it by exploring the map and killing enemies. I obviously couldn't leave them out of this book. I try to copy the font as best as I can. The hardcore fans of the game may notice that part of the original text is missing. It seemed more fitting to remove any mentions of game mechanics and keep an ominous tone, as if Hunter hands you this book in real life. I sketched this symbol, as well as Hunter's eyes on top, as they appear on the text of every entry in the game. Then I use a white Posca marker to make my text and sketches stand out. For the eyes, I want to achieve a glowing effect, so I will only draw with the marker in the middle, leaving a thin border of white pencil around them. And with that, my Hunter's journal is done! Thanks for watching!